Hello and welcome back to the Padawan podcast. My name is Jake Berlin, and this is our all Star Wars podcast. We're breaking down everything from the galaxy far, far away. I go by Qui-Gonn Jake on this show because it's a Star Wars podcast, and we have to give ourselves Star Wars names.
Of course.
And today I am just joined by Grand Admiralcino himself, Grand Admiralcino.
Hello.
We do not have Obi-Wan Jacoby. He is out on vacation back home in Southern California today, and it is going to be us running the ship, talking a little bit of Clone Wars. The show is returning this Friday, and we're going to be breaking down some of our favorite things that happened in the first 6 seasons of the show. Kind of a little preview for the show. We're not going to kind of like do a return review of the series or anything of that nature. We're just going to talk about some of our favorite moments and have fun with it. And that's going to be based around our 5 favorite lightsaber duels and our 5 favorite moments from the show. Kind of just breaking it down a little bit. And the way it's going to work is, let's say Brian mentions one of mine on his list. When it gets to that point and it's on my list, I won't go into detail about why I love it. I will just mention that it is that number on my list so we don't repeat it twice, and vice versa. And so that's the way it's going to work. And we're going to start off with our lightsaber duels. But before we get going, I just want to thank you guys for joining us. If you are joining us for the first time, this show happens every single week. Padawan Podcast, it's on YouTube. You can find us on iTunes, Apple, or not iTunes anymore, but Apple, Anchor, Spotify, everywhere you can find audio podcasts, we are up on there as well. With that said, let's go ahead and get going, and I will let my guests go first on lightsaber duels. Okay. If you happen to have honorable mentions, you can mention those as well.
I don't.
I mentioned a few because just it's so freaking hard to not mention some of them. And I will
say them after we're done, right?
I will mention the honorable mentions after we go through our 5. So why don't you start us off, Brian? What is your 5th ranked lightsaber duel of the Clone Wars?
So my 5th ranked lightsaber duel would be Dark Ahsoka versus Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Oh, love this moment.
Pretty low?
I'll withhold my comment.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like,
question.
After I said it, I was like, wait, don't say anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, it was like awesome and heartbreaking at the same time to see like her dueling against these two, and they're just like trying to make sure she's okay and just like trying to help her.
The show is based around not just the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka, but it's based around the 3 of them.
Yeah, I've always taken it kind of just almost like their little family, those 3.
That and the show, if you really look at the heart of the show, it's from Ahsoka's perspective.
Absolutely.
And so seeing that moment isn't just like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening, but it's also the first time in Star Wars ever that we've seen a Jedi go dark then come back at one point. Mm-hmm. And it was used so perfectly because it was within the Mortis storyline, which is a huge part of the series. There was a lot of firsts within this 3-episode arc, but this moment in general, like the emotional tug it has is so powerful.
Yeah, it's a like you said, we haven't seen one go good to bad to good, and it was a heart terror of an episode. Yeah. So yeah, that was my number 5, Dark Ahsoka versus Anakin.
It's definitely one that's in the conversation when you talk about it. So but for me, my 5th ranked one is Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress versus Dooku. And we're gonna be talking about this a little later on when we get to our moments, because I have no doubt that it's either on one of our lists or both of our lists. This moment, though, is extremely powerful for a couple reasons. One, it's ex-Padawan versus Old Master, right? Dooku and Ventress. This is after the betrayal of Dooku going after Ventress because Palpatine, Sidious was like, you need to cut ties with her. You need to kill her. She's getting too powerful. Blah, 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 like that type of stuff. Again, we'll talk about later on. But this is the first, outside of Attack of the Clones, which we saw a little bit of Dooku and how powerful he was. We see how powerful Dooku is in this episode. This specific episode is when we see Dooku in his full, like, I am a Sith Lord. Yeah. Don't mess with
Dark
me.
Tyrannus.
This is why I am who I am. And it showed, and it's like going into the battle, you can clearly see like, okay, maybe Asajj has the upper hand a little bit. The second that starts, that's out the window. Yeah. Like he takes over this battle, and Savage is like powerful. He was clearly a little bit new in it and everything. But Asajj is she's clearly like a veteran in it. She's learning from Dooku, so it's a clear good battle, but Dooku just manhandles them. and the way that it's choreographed as far as animation goes is like brilliant. And so I just felt like, and it's cool because a lot of the series, a lot of the best lightsaber battles are based on dark side users.
Absolutely.
And we get to see like the difference in the fighting that they have. And this is one of the highlights of that. And there's just no way I couldn't put it on my list.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because I literally just looked in every single one of mine. Dark Ahsoka is some form of dark.
They really,
dark person.
They really dug into that, and
yeah.
it's a credit to the show because they're allowed to do that. In the movies, they couldn't because it's very you have to.
You're telling the story of good guys.
You have to structure it differently in the films. The Clone Wars. They did 3-episode arcs. It's like an anthology series, and you could do that with these episodes. But a lot of the time, they were focusing on these dark side users, and they were able to explain and show how different they were from the Jedi.
Yeah, because I mean, in the movies, you're seeing the good guys' point of view from the most part.
Yes, totally.
But this kind of gives you that like filler of this is why the good guys are doing this. This is why the good guys are
it's adding layers to everything.
Absolutely, yeah. Which is a perfect way to put it.
I know a lot of people aren't fans of animation, but this is why I suggest these shows so much. Well, it's why I suggested it to you and Jacob so much.
Yeah, I refuse to watch it. I was one of those ones that like I'm not watching it. Anakin didn't have a Padawan because I was like movies, and then like. I mean, I always was like, eventually started to like, when it realized like the stuff was like all connected and stuff. And then you pushed me towards it. And I was like,
it's necessary.
Okay, now,
as Star Wars fans, it's necessary.
Yeah, now if you're like going to be a like Star Wars fan, you have to watch the animated stuff. So,
all right, let's move on to number 4.
My number 4 is probably going to be a shocker to a lot of people. And that is Maul vs. Pre Vizsla.
Wow, that low, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting. Is there a reason why it's that low? Just like the ones above a little bit more?
I just think I wasn't as, like, what's the term? I'd invested in Pre Vizsla as a character.
I think he's such a brilliant character.
He is. Don't get me wrong. But, like, he was only, like, given to me through this short time, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it happened pretty quickly. He's popping in here and there.
Yeah, whereas like someone like Maul, any of the characters from the movies, Ahsoka, you have these histories with. I mean, Ahsoka is technically only from this, but she's been in like every single episode at that point. So he was still like. I mean, this is the first time we've seen. Well, it wasn't the first time, but it was the Darksaber and stuff like this. But like, I think I wasn't as like.
Well, and there's also another lightsaber fight that takes place in that arc that's a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah, and
I'm sure we'll get to that.
But yeah, I the character Pre Vizsla was amazing. I just wasn't emotionally like.
That's fair.
Attached to someone like if he would stab Maul and kill Maul, I would have been. They would probably be like number 1 because just like, oh my god, no, he killed Maul. Like, but I mean,
it's fair.
At the end of the day, like Pre Vizsla, like he had this little purpose, and it was just in these little bits of story, and then they moved on.
It's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 4, a little bit of a different one, but it's because it has the emotional tug impact, I guess is a bit of a better word, but it's Obi-Wan and Adi Gallia versus Maul and Savage. And this is the moment Obi-Wan and Maul first meet after the events of the Phantom Menace.
This one always sticks in my mind because of the scene I'm sure
if you've never seen the Clone Wars and you're watching this, this is definitely one of the reasons why you should watch this. I believe this episode started, I want to say it opened like season 4. It's like the very first, I think it was a season opener. I think it was season of either 4 or 5, but Obi-Wan and Adi Gallia, and I may be pronouncing her name wrong, they're just on a mission, and Maul and Savage, they come with essentially a bunch of pirates, and they wreak havoc. And that moment when Maul and Obi-Wan see each other for the first time is so impactful as a Star Wars fan, because you know how important that is going through Rebels and then clearly going through the rest of the trilogy, because that kind of
comics,
it sticks with Obi-Wan through the movies a little bit. And then the battle that ensues, you kind of see, this is the first time you really see a different side of Obi-Wan, because the Jedi ways kind of go out the window, and it's like, this guy killed my master. I thought I killed him once. Yeah, and I thought I killed him once. Like, I just need to go after him. Like, it's kind of like he steps out of the ways of a Jedi a little bit and kind of goes more towards a the direction of like a Qui-Gon than more so the classic Obi-Wan that we know. And the fighting style is just incredible. I mean, Obi-Wan, you get to see how powerful he really is because he's taking on not just Maul but his brother Savage. Yeah, and we know at this point how powerful Savage is.
Absolutely.
And so, and they're going through like the cave, and Maul or I think it might have been Savage that killed Adigalia, or maybe no, I think it might have been Maul. I think Maul kills her, and it's kind of like the first time that we see like a Jedi like really die in the series.
That's probably one of the most brutal ways we've seen a Jedi die.
Like, it shows like this different side of the series, and it just pulls at the heartstrings of Star Wars fans because going back to Phantom Menace, we know how important this is to Obi-Wan, and it just gets me every time. Like I can watch that fight, and it's also a very long fight.
It's a very long fight.
It goes. It's almost like Phantom Menace in a way where they go through like a bunch of different locations, which is kind of why it like sticks with me, I guess. But again, it all comes down to Obi-Wan and Maul and why it gets that's why it's so high for me.
Yeah, I think that death scene probably has like been burned into my brain because I was like, holy
and this is claimed to be a kid's show, and there's multiple, and we'll go through this list, but there's multiple times where there's like brutal deaths happening.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she literally died by him stabbing her through.
And there's very few fights in the movies that end with actual deaths. Almost every single one of these, at some point or another, ends with a death.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, yeah. But that one, yeah. Her death scene. It's literally like probably whenever this gets brought up is probably the first thing I think of, just because of the pure like holy.
And I would have loved to have seen more of her for sure. Like she was a very cool character, but I understand why.
And you see her in a lot of other stuff, minimally used, but yeah.
So yeah, let's move on to the top 3, the pedestal.
Number 3 for me, another shocker,
podium, not pedestal, podium.
The podium, yeah. Would be the infamous Darth Sidious versus Maul and Savage.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see what your 2 and 1 are, because I figured that this would have been number 1 for you.
It is.
I'm really shaking here.
Yeah,
I really am.
I don't know what it is. I just have such a hard time taking Darth Sidious fighting so like literal.
Really?
Just because he does some like. He is like, I mean, I get it. He's still, I guess, pretty young.
Well, you have to differentiate the movies and the show, though.
No, well, I mean, even if he was, this is probably going on. He's probably like, what, in his 40s, maybe, when this is going on. So, I mean, yeah, it still is like, I don't know. It's something about Sidious, just like, how he's just so like, all over the place and like whatever, but don't get me wrong, like this is still high up there for me.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of fights in Clone Wars, and having it be a 3 is still a good thing.
Absolutely. But yeah, and then when he kills Savage, it's just like, and he's just like, F you, like look at what I just did.
Yeah, it's essentially he manhandles Maul.
Oh, absolutely.
Manhandles Maul, kills his brother in front of him, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's the last time we see him in the series, Maul. Am I mistaken by that? I could have swore that's the last time we see him in the series.
I'm not sure. I feel like you see him one more time.
Maybe. I have to rewatch it. I rewatch it sparingly, but I don't ever watch it like it's always like here and there. Yeah, there's so much. I feel like that's the last time.
If it's not, he was in like the next one, and then he was done.
It was, but yeah, he completely just owns them.
Yeah,
Am I correct by saying that Sidious has two sabers, right?
I think
he has 2 sabers.
I believe
Savage has the double-sided, and Maul has the double-sided, right? They both do? Or no, not Maul. Maul hasn't done the double-sided yet.
Maul likes to use the one.
He has the single at this point. He does get back to the double at one point, but he has the single at this point. But yeah, Sidious has the 2 sabers, which is why people think it's so crazy, because in Revenge of the Sith he only has the 1.
Yeah,
and so it was kind of a back and forth thing.
I mean, he did kill 4 of them in 20 seconds.
This fight is bonkers. Yeah, it's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, again, it's long.
Yeah, and this is the one that I mentioned earlier, that it came after the Pre-Vizsla Maul one.
Yeah,
and it tops that one.
Yeah,
but yeah, for me, number 3 is Maul versus Pre-Vizsla, and we talked about it already. I think for me, just quickly, why it ranks it at number 3 a little bit higher than some of the others. It's really the first time we get to see like Maul be Maul again. He's like kind of back to being powerful, right? He just took over like this pirate organization. He's trying to take over Mandalore. He has a little bit of something more to fight for, and also it's a lot of it has to do with the history behind not the black saber. I always say black saber.
You always say
the dark saber. You know, we learn all this mythology behind it, like how it was like 1,000 years in a generation. The Jedi and Mandalorians have been fighting over forever. It was first wielded by a Mandalorian of the Vizsla clan, the only ever Jedi Mandalorian. Whoever wields the dark saber essentially is all powerful to the Mandalorians, or at least the Vizsla clan and Death Watch. And so, and also it's the fighting style. Like you have one complete Force user just using the Force, and then you have Vizsla who's powerful with the sabers, but also a bounty hunter at the same time using those tactics. Yeah. And also the way it ends, Maul cutting his head off is like bonkers. Yeah. And taking over the Mandalorian clan.
Here's another skill that you're
and them essentially kneeling and being like, okay, you're a leader now. Like that's how it works for them. And then also Bo-Katan kind of going off and doing her thing with that clan and those Mandalorians. Like there's so much going on with it, and you know how I love the Mandalorians, so like just like sticks in my head.
Well, plus I just read the Son of Dathomir, and like that's kind of like almost like right after this happens, and it's just
so
like
there's a lot of cool things with this fight, but the fight in general, how it's kind of crafted, with like rockets with Pre-Vizsla and just Maul being Maul again, it's really a brilliant fight.
So. It is absolutely a brilliant fight, and I mean that's why some votes for our list.
All right, well let's move on to our number two.
Number two, I have Obi-Wan and Asajj versus Maul and Savage.
I love this fight.
Every time I say that for one, I'm like, wait, did I say Asajj or Savage? Savage. Yeah, this one, wild. Absolutely wild. And you got lightsabers flying everywhere, and it's just, again, a long fight.
I will hold back on that because the reason it's not on my list is because it wasn't long. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was a little bit shorter because it started with Obi-Wan versus the two of them, and then Asajj jumped in after.
That's true.
And so that is the sole reason why it's not on my list, but in my honorable mentions.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
But it is cool to see Obi-Wan wield a red saber because he does do it in the episode.
That's kind of why
it is pretty cool to see that happen.
That's kind of one of the reasons why it's high up on mine. And like, if you know me, like Asajj is probably top 5.
Well, and their relationship is so interesting, Asajj and Obi-Wan. Like, obviously they're on opposite sides, and they've been fighting each other for a long time, but they have like this sort of respect for each other. And you don't see that with a lot of characters. And I think it may have to do with the fact that Asajj essentially got dunked by Dooku. She's almost like a bounty hunter for hire in her own ways. Still not a good person, but if she needs to do something for On, like she does in this episode, but it is really cool to see those four together. Like on screen, those four together, like it's pretty bonkers.
Yeah, those, I mean, honestly, probably, if not including Ahsoka, is probably my 4 favorite characters in the whole entire thing, and they're all fighting each other.
Yeah.
So it's wild, and like you said, Obi-Wan's holding a red lightsaber, and it's like,
I cannot believe that.
You're just like, but yeah, so that's my number 2.
All right, my number 2 for me is Anakin versus Barriss Offee.
I was wondering if this was going to show up. I did not expect it to be this high.
Yes, it's funny because I actually forgot about it until I went back to remember when we did our lightsaber rankings of the entire saga or the entire franchise?
God, that was so
I have it in my notes still, and I was like scrolling, and this one popped up. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm forgetting about this one.
Yeah.
I may have said this then, but there's 2 reasons why I love this fight so much. One, this is when Anakin realizes that Ahsoka isn't the issue, that Ahsoka didn't do what everyone claims her to be, and that Barriss Offee was behind it. 2, we kind of see the aggression and anger come out of Anakin in this fight, and it has to do with his loved ones, obviously trying to protect Ahsoka, coming in her defense, and
he
also
was ready to kill her.
Part of it takes place inside the Jedi Temple, which is wild. Like, if you watch this fight in whole, and it kind of cuts back and forth, and it doesn't seem like the longest fight, but the way that it happens and kind of how how they go back and forth with each other is pretty crazy. Obviously Barriss Offee wielding the red sabers for the first time without the mask on, because when she fought Ahsoka, she had the mask on and we didn't know who she was. But it's really an aggressive fight from Anakin's side. You kind of see that come out in his facial expressions. And again, it's in defense of Ahsoka, which obviously is one of the biggest moments and arcs in the entire series, if not the biggest.
Yeah.
And so having this fight in the middle of it, and it's also not counting the movies, like if you count it in chronological order, it's the first time we see a Jedi go bad.
Yeah.
Which also plays into it a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one that if I had honorable mention, it'd probably be like 6 on mine.
Yeah,
just
I
because
love it.
It's
I love it. I had to throw an Anakin one in there.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing the rage and the anger, and he was going to kill her.
The moment he realized that she framed Ahsoka, like,
yeah,
it comes out hard.
It's
like pre-Vader. It's like pre-Vader.
Yeah, they should have been at that point like, we need to watch him. Like, this isn't,
where's his babysitter?
Yeah, Obi-Wan needs to take care of this. But,
seriously.
Yeah, no, that like I said, if I had 6, that would be probably my number 6.
Cool. All right, well, let's move on to it. The number 1 favorite lightsaber duel of the series so far.
It is your number 5. So for me, that is Asajj Ventress and Savage versus Count Dooku.
Dude, this scene's so good. So good.
I love Asajj Ventress so much, and like the pain of like, you MFer, like you did this to me, all of that, and she's like, I'm gonna kill you, and has Savage. Those two's names are Savage and Asajj, but Savage is like, I'm gonna take you down with her, and like you said, we finally see Count Dooku, like
Prime Dooku.
Yeah, like this is like, okay, this is what everyone's afraid of. Like, this is because he's kind of a weak villain outside of Clone Wars. Like, if we
Attack of the Clones, he wasn't. He was a pawn, essentially.
Yeah,
is what he was.
Like if we didn't ever get Clone Wars, he'd probably be the weakest villain just out of what we've seen. And it's funny because I've always been in my head like, why did he shouldn't have ever been called Darth anything. This is why he was called Darth Tyrannus, and this is the reason he is bad. This is the reason Sidious chose him to be doing everything he's doing, because he is a bad MF while he's taking them on. And I that gave me a more appreciation for Attack of the Clones and the 5 seconds before he got his head chopped off in episode 3. But and just for me, it was just like the story kind of intertwined it to make this lightsaber fight better and the best for me.
Well, this comes off, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in our moments, but this comes off the heels of Dooku turning on Asajj.
Yeah.
And that's not just all that happened, though. Sidious essentially told him, you need to kill your apprentice.
Kill her.
Because she's becoming too powerful.
Yeah.
Essentially what a lot of the times happens with the Sith Lords, obviously, but it also is when Sidious was sensing a little bit of betrayal in Dooku to overpower him with Asajj.
Yeah.
And so there's still, it's almost like that, it's kind of in a way the Obi-Wan and Anakin thing from episode 3, where they have to fight, but they really deep down would rather not do it.
Yeah.
But he kind of has to, just for the sake of his own life.
Yeah, I think for me, maybe outside of the one you just said before this,
Anakin and Barriss?
Yeah, it probably to me has the most like meaning behind it, where it's like, this is because of all of these things happening. It's not just like, here's a fight scene. It's like, this happened and he's saying take care of her, he's doing that. Like, it's just so much that it made that one so much better. And that's probably why it's my favorite one.
That's totally fair. So all right, my number 1 is your number 4. I believe is your number 4. Maul and Savage versus Sidious. Which one is that?
My
3 4 5
my 3
Your 3. Okay, so Maul and Savage versus Sidious. That's my number 1.
I had a feeling this would be either your 2 or your 1.
Yeah, if we're talking all animation, there's a couple that beat this from Rebels, but as far as Clone War goes, I think this is the most brilliant lightsaber fight in the entire series.
It's really hard
insane. It's absolutely insane. The way Sidious walks up with Maul on the throne, first of all, is just total badass. Like, what a dope, like, I'm gonna F you up either way. Like, come get me right now.
He's like, I'm tired of your nonsense.
Yeah, he
like,
pulls out the two sabers, and it's kind of like this choreographed scene where they go, they're up there, then they go down there. He kills Savage. He essentially, while putting him to the ground, being like, look what I'm doing to your brother right now. And then he takes Maul with him. Like, the way, and, if you watch the fight, like, it's choreographed brilliantly. And we see how powerful Sidious is and why people should be scared of him and why he is the Dark Lord, like the leader of the Sith, and why it even needs backstory to why he's all Sith in Rise of Skywalker. Like, you see it in this moment why he's the most powerful Sith to ever live. And so I think it's just brilliant, and it's really the first time and really the only time in my mind that, or in my opinion, that we see a fight with Sidious that makes sense. Like the episode 3 fight, sure, like cool, but it was choreographed really like wonky, and it was kind of cheesy in some parts.
Honestly, I think it would have been better if he didn't just kill us.
It was more like a dance move with Mace Windu and stuff, and this is like a legit lightsaber fight. And so and then again with the emotional tugs, like the way it impacts Maul, it's his former master. He's been, this entire series, he's been doing this to kind of get revenge for what happened to him. And then he just gets thrown away, essentially, and it just destroys him. And so I think the emotional tug, the way that the fight is, how long it is, the impact, the fact that Savage gets killed and Maul pretty much just gets blown away. I don't think there's any way that this could top it for me, personally.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no reason why this can't be a number one. Like, it literally just depends on what the person likes, but I guarantee you this one would probably be in almost every single person's top 3 at least.
I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I mean, it just depends on the person, but I think almost everyone, no matter who it is, would probably put this in the top 3.
Totally. All right, well, let's move. Before we move on to our 5 favorite moments, why don't we go ahead and run through our top 5 and including any honorable mentions you may have.
Okay. Well, if I had an honorable mention, it would definitely be Anakin. I cannot.
And Barriss Sophie.
Sophie. I can't say her name. That character. Number 5, Dark Ahsoka versus Anakin and Obi-Wan. Number 4, Maul versus Pre Vizsla. 3 is Darth Sidious versus Maul and Savage. 2 is Obi-Wan and Asajj versus Maul and Savage. And number 1, Asajj and Savage.
You should just say Ventress and Savage. Yeah, she's pretty much called Ventress.
Yeah, at that point. But oh god, tongue twister.
Okay, so I have 3 honorable mentions. The first one is Dooku versus Ventress and the Night Sisters. And I will note that this is a 12-on-1 battle, and Dooku manhandles them all. Okay,
that if I would have thought that we could count that, I probably would have put it in my top.
It's a lightsaber fight. Their Night Sisters are on the side, but it's 2 sabers going at it.
Yeah, true.
Number 7 for me is Ahsoka versus Barriss Sophie when she has the mask on. There's only a few moments in the fight where they're actually clanking sabers together, because it's kind of like an up and down battle. They're throwing stuff at each other, but it's very much a lightsaber fight. Yep. And then number 6 is Dark Ahsoka versus Anakin and Obi-Wan. I had to keep that on there. I just couldn't find a way to put it in my top 5, but a 6 is definitely not a downgrade. So
yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to the most important part of the show and kind of the preview for the Clone Wars season 7. Our most memorable moments for the first 6 seasons of the series so far. Again, we're going to have 5 of them. I have 2 honorable mentions, but I will run through those at the end. But let's start this off with number 5, Brian. I will let you go first again. What is your 5th most memorable moment from the series so far?
Mine probably might be a little bit shocking to be a number 5, but it is Ahsoka turning away from the Jedi Order.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm shocked. I'll tell you I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Why is it that low?
I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. Maybe just because I like to look into things more, or like things where it's like
more detail.
Maybe something that I've been wondering for a long time that they've answered, or like something that maybe gives me a little more context. Something that a lot of it has to do with something I've been wanting to know, and then they've answered it, so that probably ranks higher. Whereas this one,
got it.
This is something that happened that was a part of the storyline that no one knew that this was going to happen at the time. It's whereas some of these other things, without giving it away, like you've heard of, and then for them to visit them is where it's like,
interesting.
yes, they finally answered that.
Interesting.
So yeah, but I mean, oh God, this moment, like,
we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Jake's not gonna let me talk very much about this one.
Okay, so I really had a hard time with my 7, 6, 5, and 4. They could really go in any order, but the number 5 I have at the moment is the younglings facing the Jedi trials with their kyber crystals. I know a lot of people that I listen to and I talk to think of this moment as like pretty cheesy and that it's very kiddie, which I understand that argument, but you also have to look at the side of a Star Wars fan. This is the only time in the entire franchise we see Jedi actually go for their kyber crystals.
Yep.
For example, Rey in The Rise of Skywalker, we never saw her get her yellow one, or how she got it, or if it's just a crystal turned a different color, or whatever it may be. We've read about it in some things, but this is the only time we've actually been able to see it on screen. And it's actually like a brilliantly written way to do it.
Yep.
And even knowing later on that actual planet becomes Starkiller Base is a really cool tidbit too. That
almost like guts me even more.
Yeah,
knowing
totally.
this and then seeing
but it makes sense, like
Absolutely.
The First Order taking over Jedi planets for the Kybers and everything like that, or the Empire or whatever it is. But
First Order.
Yeah, First Order. But yeah, it's just a really, really cool episode. How it's laid out, first of all, they're kids. They're anywhere from the age of 8 to 12, I imagine, and they have to go on by themselves, and they have to find these crystals in a cave that's full of crystals.
Yeah,
they have to find a kyber crystal that's in a cave full of crystals.
The crystal that's calling them.
Yeah, and each of them are in different ways. They struggle. Fate can tempt you to certain things. We saw the main kid, the boy, thought he had it, but he had to go back in and everything like that. He got trapped on the inside, then they had to work together. There's really cool things, and it's part of the trials, and it's the first time we've ever seen that. And then it kind of follows up with some very cool episodes with them constructing their sabers, which is the only ever time we see that as well, of how they do that with the robot master, which is a really cool guy. And then Hondo takes over the ship, and it kind of leads to this whole little adventure for them. But I think it's just a really important episode for the mythology of Star Wars. And I mean, I said it already, but I wrote this down. I said the series once again takes its time to give us answers about the Force, the Jedi, and its mysterious ways. And we know the Force works in mysterious ways, and we kind of get an answer to that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you picked this one because I didn't think you would. And that's why it's my number 4.
Nice. So
it's perfect segue into mine because to be honest, I didn't think you would put this on there. It almost came off. Yeah. It's my number 4 because the reasons I just said. This is something I've always wanted to see is how they get the crystals.
I would love to see it in live action, but I also understand that the way it happens also fits animation very well.
Do you finish Fallen Order?
Not yet.
You do this in the
Sweet.
game.
Perfect.
So it that is something you get to do. Cool.
I imagine that's how you get the orange crystal.
Well, you get to pick colors,
but that's how the orange crystal comes about.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
But the fact that you get to see them, now know the history of why and how they get these crystals, the trial, the everything. Like, this is a question I've always wanted to know the answer to. And always been told, oh yeah, they go on a quest to get a crystal. You're like, okay, well, I get to imagine it. Now you get to see it, and that is big to me. And that's a huge freaking deal. The fact that they're showing it, and it just only makes it that more heartbreaking that Starkiller Base just ripped out Ilum, and that's exactly what.
And it's also cool that it's led by Yoda, obviously the master of all masters. Yeah. But then Ahsoka, essentially.
She's the teacher for the day.
But for us as fans, it solidifies her as one of the most important Jedis out there because I imagine only certain Jedi are allowed to do that with Padawans.
Absolutely. And so ironically, yours is 5, mine was 4. So
I imagine maybe this will probably be on your list. But my number 4 is, and it's, I guess you can call it a moment, but it kind of harkens back to one of the saber fights we had, is Osage hunting down Dooku. And a couple of notes I had here is it's more necessary content focused on Asajj Ventress. She's one of the biggest and badass characters in the entire series. She disappeared for some time. She came back, but I like that this is the storyline they went with her. And unfortunately, we never got to see Dark Disciple on screen, but knowing that story, it adds to it.
Please read that book. It's so good.
And I also wrote this as more background on the inner workings of the dark side, and more specifically the Sith. A la Dooku being apprehensive against Sidious, all because Sidious senses Ventress's true power, and that Dooku was planning to betray him just as he did his own master. And as we mentioned with the fight, it shows Dooku in his all powerful. He's just we understand why Dooku is Dooku now because of this stuff. But I think it's a great moment because it's Master versus Padawan on the dark side of it, and that's something we've never seen. We've only heard of, obviously, with Palpatine and his master. And then at one point, Vader and Palpatine. But this is like in the heart, the prime of it, Asajj versus Dooku, and I think it's a great moment.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I'm actually again surprised that this is on your list, and I'm actually kind of surprised that some of that we're crossing paths on this, just because there's so many.
There's so many moments. So many moments. It's so hard to choose. And I guarantee we're forgetting some, and some people are probably yelling at us. But
100%.
These are the ones that we can think of at the moment. But yeah. It's just that's my number 4. So
Great.
Let's move on to the podium, not the pedestal, the podium of my favorite moments of the series so far.
My number 3 is Yoda interacting with Darth Bane.
So I will say this is one of my honorable mentions, and I'll explain why.
Because. Again, I love when history comes in and they finally show you things. And Darth Bane is a character that is constantly talked about, no matter at what point you're like, no matter what point you're at in any of Star Wars, like his name will probably come up in a conversation. And to actually see him interacting with freaking Yoda is wild. And the fact that Yoda's going to a Sith temple to do this is like, holy hell, like they're full on going there. Like it's Yoda doing it. It's not Obi-Wan, it's not Anakin, it's not Ahsoka, it's freaking Yoda doing it.
It's the only time we've ever seen Morbin on screen.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing.
Yeah. So, I mean...
And if you don't know what Morbin is, it's the home of the Sith.
Yeah. So, isn't it Korriban now?
I think they changed it from Korriban to Morbin.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I always mix them up.
I don't know why they changed it, but whatever.
They just went for the next letter in the alphabet.
I guess M's are more important in Star Wars.
It blew my mind that they went there, and the fact that Darth Bane was voiced by Mark Hamill. Mm-hmm. You have arguably the greatest good guy voicing arguably one of the biggest bad guys, and it's just like, holy! I mean, he's literally the voice in my Sith holocron, and it's just like, it's wild. That blows my mind that they went there for that.
Yeah, so the only reason why I didn't put it on my top 5 is because I felt like it wasn't finished.
I agree.
I felt like it was very short-lived.
Yep.
And I understand that moment is just one episode. It makes sense why it could be very quickly, because inside of a movie it would probably be exactly the same. But I just felt like I was almost shortchanged it only being one episode.
Well, recently didn't we find out it was intended to go on a little more, weren't they?
Well, yes, but that was until they canceled it, so they weren't able to do anything.
Exactly, swear that there's your short change right there.
And so, but you had mentioned all the things you had mentioned, but also the one thing that this episode does, or this moment, is that it slightly introduces Yoda to the beginning of the end. Yeah, he has this sense of doubt going forward now, because he kind of, Bane essentially gives him a little bit of a peek into Order 66 and what's going to happen, and that's a big thing. Yeah, that's essentially what the entire series is hinging on, because we know what comes next in Episode 3. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, you said Yoda and Darth Bane, and if you guys don't know who Darth Bane is, and I clearly doubt you won't, but Darth Bane is essentially the Yoda for the dark side. Yeah, and Sidious is a different entity altogether, but not ever being introduced to Bane yet in physical form. he's essentially Yoda for the dark side. He created the rule of two. He changed the ways of the Sith, all that type of stuff. And seeing them interact, like you said. But it's very cool, too, because it's actually not his true physical form, because he looks like a samurai.
Yeah.
And he looks very different than what he would look like in real life. And so it's definitely a big moment.
Yeah. So that's why it's my number 3.
All right, my number 3, and we mentioned it already in the lightsaber fights, but it's Maul's short-lived victory as the wielder of the Darksaber. It's the battles between Pre Vizsla and Sidious. A lot of interactions here, obviously, beheading Vizsla. But the one moment we haven't mentioned as to why this is kind of a big deal, all of why he's doing this isn't just to get revenge on Sidious, but it's to exact his revenge on Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And the one moment we haven't mentioned is when he kills Satine in front of Obi-Wan. Yeah. And that's one of the, if not the saddest moments in the entire series. Early on in the series, we learned that Obi-Wan had this relationship with Duchess Satine, one of the coolest characters of the entire series. I can say that she's probably short-lived as a character because I would have loved to have seen more from her. Leader of Mandalore, and Maul killing her in front of Obi-Wan is a huge deal. Like,
absolutely.
It arguably changed Obi-Wan after that. We saw this different side of him with her around, and that plays into this entire moment. And then we mentioned the Maul and Savage versus Sidious moment. But that whole moment of Maul becoming powerful, taking the Darksaber, killing Satine, and then losing to Sidious is like something that's we probably never would have thought we saw on screen, and it was done brilliantly in this show. Yeah,
I mean, him killing her, she was Obi-Wan's weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean,
just as Padme was with, maybe not to that extent.
Yeah,
but they had a past.
Absolutely,
and I think if I'm not mistaken, he even said inside the show, I would leave the order for you.
Yeah.
He would have left the order for her.
Yeah. So we've always thought of Obi-Wan as this just like straight and arrow, but if there's one point where the arrow wasn't going like on a straight path, it probably would have been her.
Totally.
Because I mean, even as much as he loves Anakin, like he was pretty straight and arrow with Anakin, like, get your stuff in check. Like you shouldn't be doing stuff like that. But when she was around, he was like,
And it's also going to be interesting to see if this plays into the series, if he has like maybe like a wife or a family, because people who don't watch the show are going to be like, that's not Obi-Wan. It is Obi-Wan. Yeah. Like, he has a past. This is what he kind of always wanted. And I think, I don't know if it was the reason, but if he had never been the master to Anakin, I think he probably would have left the order for her. I think that was probably the only reason why he had stayed.
Probably.
Because of Qui-Gon's essentially like demand of like, you need to train him.
His dying wish was train the kid. But yeah, no, it's not in mine, but it's definitely worthy to be in someone's. Yeah. So
all right, on to number 2.
Number 2 is Asajj Ventress taking on Dooku. Like, it's like I said, that the storyline coming to like a header right there. I mean, like I said, she's one of my favorite characters for a reason, and it coming to this and just like the pain of like her almost caring for Dooku in a way. And then just him just being like, you're trash. Like, it's like,
essentially,
yeah. And like, he was her Darth Sidious, where it was just like, I need you to do this. Mm-hmm. You're not serving your purpose. Get out. And that's kind of how Darth Sidious just runs through people. But for her, it was more than that. And to see that like pain coming from her, that was like, yeah, that it honestly, it could have been my number 1.
I'm interested to see what your number 1 is. I have a feeling I know what it is, but I'm interested.
No, you're not.
All right, my number 2 is my favorite arc in the entire series. That is the Mortis arc.
Yeah.
The Mortis moments. When Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka get trapped on the Mortis cube, I guess you can call it, the other world.
The world between worlds.
No, the world between worlds is from Rebels when the time travel aspect of it. And so.
This whole storyline, still to this day,
you talked about history and everything like that. This, to me, this is arguably the most historical diving into mythology moment in the entire series. It dives into what the Force is and what it means and why it is and how it is. We did the introduction of the son, the daughter, and the father. The daughter being the light, the son being the dark, and the father kind of being like the in between a little bit, almost like the gray part of it all. And of course the Mortis dagger, one of the biggest objects in the entire universe of Star Wars. We mentioned Dark Side Ahsoka, but the biggest thing is it's Anakin went Vader before Vader. Like he went Vader before Vader and he didn't know it, which is so cool. We see Obi-Wan and Anakin fight. We see, Ahsoka go bad. She dies. They bring her back to life. Like, there's so many cool mythology moments in here. And I understand, like, a lot of people's arguments, the fact that it can be very confusing and, like, why is this happening or how is this happening? But if you look at it just as an arc, it's like super Star Wars. It's an incredible arc. Super Star Wars, and it makes sense as to why it could be there. Because the Force,
absolutely,
as the famous line, the Force works in mysterious ways, and this is another aspect of that.
Yeah, I appreciate it for what it is. It confuses the hell out of me.
You're not the only one. I understand why.
But it is definitely important. It's definitely big. I probably will watch that arc before. I mean, it's probably not going to have anything to do with.
I want to play it into Rebels. They popped up in not the beings, but the mural popped up in Rebels.
I'll probably rewatch just those episodes, just because it's like so. I mean, people
so
talk.
Important.
It might arguably be like one of the most important things outside of like the movies.
Well, they saw Vader before Vader happened.
Yeah, it's just like it almost doesn't feel like it belongs with Clone Wars. It almost feels like it's its own entity.
Could you imagine that as a movie?
It would be. I would. Yeah, it easily could be, and that's kind of almost what it almost feels like. It's its own movie just because of how it's like talked about. I think for me, I think confused me a little bit, and that's what took it away.
You're not the only one.
I think maybe now that I'm older, I'd probably be able to understand it. So
in this scene or in this arc, there's a deleted scene actually from this arc where Anakin was talking to Revan.
Yeah,
the famous deleted scene of the Clone Wars that was supposed to happen in this. They cut it. And so that's why we've never seen Revan on screen before, is because of that being cut. Yeah, I think that this is like the ultimate mythology dive into moment of the entire series. And it's just, I mean, it's Vader before Vader. Like you see Anakin, like we talked about him being aggressive with the fight with Barriss Offee. This is like full on aggression, because he clearly he goes to the dark side in this episode.
Yeah.
So
it's arguably the most like mythology-ish of Star Wars. Yeah. So
mythological is the word.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to our number one favorite moment or memorable moment of the Clone Wars so far.
Mine probably will come as shock to people, but it's the whole Battle of Dathomir.
So I think that moment is called Maul is the true son of Dathomir.
Yeah. I don't know why I find myself always so drawn to the stories coming from Dathomir. Yeah. Because I feel like they're so probably mythological almost in a way. And it's the first time and really only time we see like magic, if you will, from it. And it's funny because they spell magic with and then the K at the end of it.
However they want.
Yeah, but literally, I just read the Son of Dathomir comics, and it's like magic, and then it has K at the end of it. But it kind of shows you there's more stuff than just the Force, and they're literally raising people from the dead.
Yeah,
to fight General Grievous and all, and it's like, holy mother, like this is literally funny mother.
Yeah, mother.
And it's just like, it's wild. It is freaking wild. They've got zombies shooting these like crossbows that are like powered by like, look like kyber crystal. And it's just like, it's freaking wild. And it's Dathomir to me is probably one of the most underused things that we have in Star Wars, but it's easily one of the coolest.
Well, it's been used a lot in the animation.
Yeah, in the animation, it definitely has. But like, and I mean, even the new video game, new video game, you go and explore it. So for me, like, the video game you literally takes from this comic book arc,
and we see it play again in Rebels as well.
Yeah. So I remember just watching it, and just going like, holy moly. And it's literally like a war battle going on in this.
Dathomir plays a huge part in it.
Yeah.
In the series, I mean. And
it's basically completely attached to Maul's whole story arc.
Well, yeah, and we get the episode beforehand of how they find Savage and how they kind of build him into being Savage, and how they essentially go through these like trials of Maul's people, how it's male and female, essentially tribes. The magic aspect is really cool. In Rebels,
and I love Mother Talzin.
Yeah, Talzin. Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters are awesome. I think they're so cool. Asajj being connected to them as well is super badass. How she was one of them, but she was force sensitive, and just the relationship and everything like that. It's a very cool aspect of Star Wars that, it might. I would love to see how it would be played on live action, but I have a feeling like it would come off very wonky in live action because it wouldn't make sense to a lot of viewers. But in animation, it plays very well. Very well in animation.
And if you dive into like comics and lore and stuff, like Sidious was afraid of her.
Oh yeah. I think magic is the one thing that the Force should be afraid of.
Yeah, and like Sidious was like, if she's around, like, I'm screwed.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And so I think that whole, like importance of this kind of just made it that much bigger. And he's just like, she needs to go. And that planet needs to go. Otherwise, this is going to unrail everything. So, yeah. That's my number one.
All right. My number one, shocker, is Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order. How can this not be your number one? This is the most important moment of the entire Clone Wars, people. Yeah. This is the biggest moment. Brian's wrong on this aspect. He's completely wrong. Anybody who says this is number one is wrong. And I'll tell you why. It is the only time we ever see a Jedi walk away from the Order in Star Wars. Period. Plain and simple, it happened. It happened in the show, and it's absolutely brilliant how it happened because it followed the main character and how she left the show, or the Order, not the show. I mean, I guess she left the show. Technically, she left the show. And so, the series is if you really look at the Clone Wars, it's from her perspective. It's from even the movie to her, it's from her perspective. We get all these different stories with characters and everything, but it's really from her perspective through the entire 6 seasons, and it looks like season 7 will do the same thing for the most part. And so having her leave is a huge aspect, her being a Jedi, and essentially not following an order of the classic Jedi being like, well, this is the way the Jedi do things. She's like, F that. Like, I don't believe in this. This isn't how I was taught. This isn't how we were raised as younglings. Like, this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. And she tosses her sabers away and walks away and disappears. It's a huge moment. And not just because of that, but because of the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Like, it's a heartstring moment. When you see that moment of them talking and him chasing after her.
His hands.
Like, it's such a big moment. Like, she has the strength and the dignity to be like, no, like, I'm not doing this. Like, this isn't what we were taught to do. This isn't how we were raised. This isn't what we were supposed to be as Jedi. And she's, I'm not going to be this anymore. And it kind of shifts Anakin views. And you can tell, like, this is where the anger sets in of him with the council.
Yeah.
In episode 3, it starts with him not allowed to be a master. He's on the council, but he's not a master. In the movies, that's kind of where you get the first sense of it. If you add this on top of it, this is like the beginning of it.
Yeah, I agree. It should obviously probably be number one. But I completely agree. This is probably the first string that snapped for Anakin. Mm-hmm. The first true string that snapped where he was like, what? Like where he loses it essentially.
The council lost faith in her.
Yeah.
They didn't believe her the entire time. And it's funny because aren't Jedi supposed to sense things? And she was telling him the entire time, I didn't do this. Like, I didn't do this.
Yeah. Okay. Here's why it bothers me and probably isn't up on mine is the more and more we dive into this time period, the more and more annoyed I get with the Jedi.
Well, yeah, they were terrible. We know that.
Yeah, I know. And it just literally, it bothers me that how like dumb they were. And like, I mean, it's literally like they were like, oh, don't fall into this trap. And they're like, oh, let's walk that way. And we're going to fall right into the trap. And it just kind of drives me nuts in a way how almost easily manipulated the Jedi are. And even Yoda. This is honestly probably one of the biggest problems I have with Yoda, and why when people say like, oh, Yoda's one of the best characters, I'm kind of like, and I sit there and I'm like, he kind of is an idiot sometimes, because he falls for a lot of this stuff. Like, you would think that he would have been able to sense this out.
Like, you thought all of them. Well, not just this, but we talk about the movie aspect about Palpatine being Sidious.
Yeah, and so
which is the one we always talk about.
Yeah, and so this is where it kind of like falls for me, but the importance I 100% understand.
That's why it raises for me.
Exactly,
because knowing the more and more we get farther away from the prequels, and the more we learn about certain moments, we see that, and Luke even said it in The Last Jedi about how dumb they were and how misled they were, and how they just didn't see things that happened in the Clone Wars and the prequels. And this is just another moment to add on top of that. Like, one of their own was being blackmailed and they couldn't sense it.
Yeah.
Neither of them could believe or sense it or see it. And that's something that the Jedi have blocked themselves off from the entire time. And the more and more that we get away from it, the more and more we believe Luke about how the Jedi need to die and something else needs to rise, whether it's the old ways or something completely new. And so it's a very interesting time period, but that's why it raises a little bit more for me. So.
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
Plus, it's what the entire series hinges on.
Yeah, it's literally
and then it just adds a little bit more when she walks back into Rebels, and I lose my mind.
When she, oh god,
last episode of season 1, when she walks in, you hear her voice, and you're like, ah,
yeah, and then she takes on Vader.
Oh, dude, let's not even get started.
Yeah,
not even get
started.
But
yeah, I mean, the story is her story.
Yes,
this is what arguably made her one of the most popular characters of all time.
And it wasn't even in the last season. It was in season 5. Like, they took a chance, and Filoni's like, I'm gonna drop a bomb on you guys and take out the main character. Like, and that's his baby, and he's like, I'm gonna do it. Like, this is what happens.
And he didn't kill her either. Well, I know, but I'm saying, like, you could have easily been like, oh, she's not in the movies because she's dead. No, you made a whole.
It was a more impactful story.
Yes, yeah. And I respect that aspect probably more than anything. That they didn't just take okay, she died. It's just some Sith killed her.
Yep.
It's because of all of this that she's not around.
I think he was definitely playing off the fact that the Jedi were blind in the prequels. Obviously. So,
absolutely.
All right, well, let's run through our 5 most memorable moments before we get out of here. Brian, what are your 5? If you, and maybe some honorable mentions if you have them.
Honestly, this, and you would have punched me in the face if I would have. This just Savage Opress's whole storyline almost knocked out for me your number 1.
You're insane. I would kick you off the podcast.
Yeah. So that would be an honorable mention. Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order is 5. The younglings in the whole Ilum story, number 4. Yoda and Darth Bane, number 3. Ahsoka taking on Ventress in 2, and the Battle of Dathomir, number 1.
Nice. Okay, so I had 2 honorable mentions. You had mentioned Yoda and Bane is my number 7.
Mm-hmm.
My number 6 is actually the clones training on Kamino. And the Domino Squad is what they're known as.
I have one also honorable mention.
Well, I might get to it here in a second.
No, you're not.
The Domino Squad becoming, if you don't know, they become one of the most elite, if not the most elite, ARC Trooper units in the Republic. They were trained by Shaak Ti, a Jedi Master, and 2 bounty hunters. And then I can't go without mentioning the Domino Squad without mentioning 99 and his sacrifice near the end of the season. And how he saves that squadron when Grievous and Dooku attack Kamino, trying to destroy the clone operation. So my number 5 is the younglings facing the Jedi trials. My number 4 is Asajj Ventress hunting down Dooku. Number 3 is Maul's short-lived victory. Number 2 is the Mortis arc, and number 1 is Ahsoka walking away from the Jedi Order.
My other honorable was the episode with the clone that's kind of messed up?
99.
Is that what it is?
99.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember it.
The one that he sacrificed himself, or the one where during the training?
No, the one where he like gets a medal and.
So I think I believe that was the episode where he sacrificed himself.
Was it?
I think so. I think he got the medal at the beginning. And then he sacrificed himself for that squad at the end, trying to save them during the battle.
But
there's two episodes. It's the training one where the squad has to come together, where 99's like a janitor in the episode.
Yeah.
And then there's a later one where he saves them by protecting and kind of jumping into battle after being decommissioned all those years ago.
I forgot they were two. That was just one whole thing.
Well, it kind of feels... Remember, they're out of order. Who knows if they are or not.
This is a problem with me. You watched it as it came out. I watched it as the chunks. And so for me, it's everything is mushed into arcs.
I watched it as they came out. That's how it was when they came out. They weren't... It wasn't chronological when they came out.
Oh.
No. I watched the chronological afterwards. So I watched it two different ways.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think you watched it chronologically, didn't you?
I watched it I jumped around.
Yeah. So it was you watched. I gave you the chronological list, and you watched it chronologically.
Yeah. So that's the only way I've watched it. So I didn't watch it episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You did it by the chronological order that they said.
So for me, it's just like storyline.
Yeah.
So I'd mix everything up.
All right, guys. Well, there it is. The Padawan for this week, covering the Clone Wars before the debut episode for season 7 this Friday. This episode, I believe, is going to drop on Thursday. So by tomorrow, the episode will be out. And just so you know, we will be reviewing the episodes. There's 12 of them this year. We're going to be doing it the Mandalorian style. We're keeping the Fandalorian Club. It feels like a good name for our Star Wars review shows.
Fans.
And we're going to be reviewing episodes on Fridays, and those will be up, and diving into those a little bit and kind of what they mean. Again, it's 12 episodes long, and so we'll do 12 weeks of it. I believe the last episode actually ends on May the 4th, which is really, really cool.
Perfect.
And so check that out on Friday, and make sure you guys let us know some of your favorite lightsaber battles, your favorite moments in the Clone Wars. If you've never seen the Clone Wars, we'd love for you guys to watch it, and a cool way to watch it before the series actually debuts again with season 7. Disney Plus released a 20 essential episodes on the streaming service that you can watch.
Genius.
They're 20 minutes long. I know that it's only like a day or so, but you can probably watch the episode at the end of the weekend and watch the 20 episodes beforehand.
Well, even if you just watch the one, go watch
and get a good feeling for the series before that drops. It's a really, really cool idea for them because there's so many episodes that they have.
So many.
And they're all jumbled together. And
it's like almost 300.
Gio tweeted about it. He's like, thank you for dropping the 20 essential episodes.
Disney Plus, that was one of the genius things you could do.
But let us know some of the things that you guys love about the series down below. Make sure you guys follow us on every platform possible, not just YouTube and Twitter and Instagram, but on audio as well, Anchor, Apple, Spotify. We are up on there. You can listen to the Padawan in there. We love for you guys to hit that subscribe button, and not just that, but give us a rate and a like. The rate and the likes are more important because they shoot us up the charts. With those, more people are able to see us, and that's very, very important. So we really, really appreciate that. But for this week, this is the Padawan Podcast. I am Jake Berlin, your host, aka Qui-Gonn Jake. That is Grand Admiralcino himself. Thank you for joining us again, and make sure you guys find us everywhere. We'll see you guys next week. May the Force be with you.